Hello and welcome to Chart Review. This is a brand new series where we're going to be reviewing some of the most popular data visualizations and infographics from the past week and critiquing them based on their visual design. And this is so you can make better charts and maybe avoid some of the design mistakes that commonly crop up in data visualization. Let's dive right in. So we have estimated civilian-owned firearms by country. I mean, this map does exactly what it says it should do. It's giving you exactly what people want to see here, which is the USA with a high percentage of gun ownership here. Quite clear and straight to the point. There are a few things I would change here to make it a bit cleaner. This sort of subtitle here is quite redundant because we have the exact same data represented in a much neater way in the legend. So I would get rid of all of this. We also have a highest and lowest bar chart here as well. I think these aren't necessary, although I do quite like having the highest one here, just because it's an easier route in to see which countries those are. But the lowest doesn't really make any sense here because, well, one, they're so low you can't even see the bar, you can't even see the data, so I'd probably scrub this completely. Okay, now we have age distribution of Congress versus overall USA population. So it's one of these population pyramid charts. US population is a lot flatter versus the House, which is quite old, as well as the Senate, which seems even older than the House. Again, this does exactly what it tells you it should do. It's quite easy to understand. It tells you quite an interesting story that the House and Senate are far older than the rest of the USA population. That has implications for democracy, and it raises further questions outside of this chart. A few things we could do to make it a little bit better. One, include this title in this graphic itself. If this chart ever gets shared outside of Reddit, people aren't going to know exactly what it means. Color scales here, this sort of rainbow color scale that seems to be quite popular. Avoid it. There's very few occasions when a rainbow color scale works. A rainbow color scale is cyclical, so it represents data that once it gets to the end, you're back at the beginning again, like the colors of a rainbow do. Here, the ages of people don't get to the beginning once you get to the end again. Once you get to 80 plus, you don't go back round again to 9 unless you believe in some sort of reincarnation. In reality, we don't need any color here. The width of the bar is all you need to understand this data. So if you were to color all of this in just one color, it would not only be cleaner, it would be a little bit easier to understand and it'd be slightly less confusing. Also, probably just add a little label here to say that this is age. But otherwise, I feel like this is a pretty successful graphic, tells you an interesting story and has relevance outside of the graph itself. Let's see what people have said in the comments of this. I agree that there aren't enough 9-year-olds in Congress. There are plenty of them mentally. Yes, maybe there are. Right now you're basically highlighting there are no children in Congress. That's a good point. This is quite a good point actually, and we should touch on it above. So the implication here is that the House and the Senate are unrepresentative of the USA population at large, which, although is probably true in many ways, in terms of age, this chart is slightly misleading. One, the flatness of this is accentuated by including ages from 0 to 18. But really, you can't compare these ages here with the House and the Senate because you can't be in the House or Senate unless you're over, I believe it's 18, maybe it's 21 in America, I'm not entirely sure. But this is not a fair comparison to draw. Also as well, although this does look bad, it probably is quite reflective of many areas in American life. Imagine if you looked at business leaders or if you looked at authors, you would have a similar age distribution for those too. One reason for that, there are many reasons, but one reason could be that as people get older, they tend to accumulate more knowledge and accumulate more wealth, accumulate more ideas, and so therefore end up in positions of power versus those who are younger. Not saying that's in any way right, but that's probably one way to explain what you're seeing here. So that's just worth noting when you're reading charts. I think if you were to redesign this, you should probably cut this chart here so you're not showing any data for the USA population who would never be able to become a House member or a Senate member. Okay, so here we have a chart by Stats Panda showing mass shooting victims by state. Yeah, okay. I mean, look, this is a pretty simple chart. It's quite easy to understand what's going on. You have Texas here with the highest number of mass shootings, followed by California, and then some of these states over here. Things I like about this chart, the title is very, very clear. It's right at the very top. It's bold. The text is different from any other text in the chart itself, so it's visually salient. Again, you have the legend placed in a logical position on the page, so you're going to start reading from the title, move down to the graphic, and then you're going to move down to the legend. It's quite a nice visual flow. Things I would probably remove from here, these bullets, like these images aren't really, I don't feel like they're adding much to the graphic. They are pure design. There's not much data visualization going on here. The only benefit I would give these are that if people are scrolling quickly, they can instantly know that this graphic is something to do with guns or ammunition. The color scale here is a pretty good one, to be honest. We have it going to the full extent of the data, so we have an actual 0 value, which often continuous color scales don't include, and we have the highest value here, which is 151, and it's quite a logical series of colors here. This national median is 16. Oh, that's slightly confusing. So 16, I'd imagine, would be over here somewhere, but in actual fact, it's in the center, I believe. Yeah, that is confusing. I'm not entirely sure how that's been constructed. Let's see if the next chart has any help. Right, okay, same sort of thing. Same sort of nice clear title, same kind of color scheme, but the color scale is shifted to include this 0.23 national median, which is this sort of light orange there. I think it's pretty good. Really, this per capita shooting is the important one we should pay attention to here. Whereas this first one here is the real figures. Really all you're seeing is that Texas and California are the most populous states in the country. Although Texas is a little bit darker, it's still very skewed to population. Now obviously there is some value in this sense to display the real values. If this chart is to drive any sort of external action, it really should be focused on these two here. So now we have US cities with the fastest population declines in the last 50 years. This is a variety of a dumbbell chart, which will connect 2 points on an axis by a line. And usually it's to show the difference between one time period versus another. Things I really like about this chart, it has clear directionality in the lines. You can see Detroit started out at 1.5 million, and because there's this arrowhead here, you can tell that now in 2020, it's ended at just under 640,000. However, there probably is another way we can represent these dumbbells. The arrows are a nice way to represent directionality, but there's probably a simpler way. The arrows are a little bit clunky. If we have these lines without the arrowhead and represent the change in time from, let's say, transparent or an opacity of 0 in 1970 to the full orange in 2020. And then wherever you were to look on that line, you would know roughly where you were on that scale. Because right now, it looks like there's an equal weight being here, as to here, as to here. Things I would improve here, we really need to be ordering these by the biggest difference. I don't actually really understand how these are ordered. They don't seem to be alphabetical. They don't seem to be by population in 2020 or population in 1970, or the difference between 2020 and 1970. Really what I'd like to see is Detroit as the top and then ascending order by the difference. That way you can more easily infer what the most important data points in this story are. I would also clean this up a little bit here. This is slightly confusing, having 2020 to 1970 there. It kind of looks like that is part of the x-axis, although the x-axis is actually population. What it's really trying to say is that the right hand of the line is 1970 and the left hand is 2020. A better way to represent this would be to have the same arrow as you would use here, up here, and you would just, draw it like that, and then have 1970 there and 2020 there. That way, it's sort of a small model that people can look at to know how to read the rest of this graphic. I like that the only color other than black and white, the only non-neutral color in this chart is this orange. It's a very sensible design choice because you know everything related to that data encoding is going to be in the orange. It's clean and it's intuitive. Overall, this is a nice chart. I like what it's showing and it's got a good story behind it. Okay, and now we have EU to the US comparison in homicides. So we have three graphics here. On the top we have homicides in the EU and the USA, split by whether or not it's gun related or not gun related. This bottom left here is population in 2019. And then on the bottom right we have homicides per 1 million. Okay, right, so this is really the important chart here. So it seems like they've used this data combined with this data to produce the actual relative statistic here to be able to compare these two regions. And as expected, the USA has vastly more homicides per 1 million people. So yeah, this chart does get its message across in a slightly clunky way. The first thing I would change here is this graphic is really the story. So this should be front and center. It should be in the position that this graph is, because you can't really make any comparisons using this one alone or using that one. In actual fact, you don't even really need these graphs here at all. You can just have this one here. But if you really do want these, I would just move this here and have this and this in the bottom here. That's one change. We need to make sure we're labeling here, labeling the data. We can get away with these charts for not labeling the y-axis because we've labeled the bars themselves. In actual fact, that's probably preferable because the audience can just directly look at the data point and figure out how much it is. Whereas here, there's no way to know what this represents. So always provide labels for your data. Either label the axis or label the bar itself. We can clean up a bit of the visual clutter as well. These grey backgrounds, this sort of grey-white gradient, they don't really add anything. They're using up ink without adding any meaning to the data, so you could probably get rid of all of this. These grid lines here, they're fading from dark to light. It's not really adding any understanding to the data. It looks a bit strange. Either get rid of these completely or just have them all the same opacity. Let's see what some of the commenters have said here. Where are the axis labels? NOP's asked probably. Okay. This isn't beautiful at all. The top graph doesn't even seem to have units. Yeah, I mean, we pointed that out. These charts are an abomination. How dare you? They're strong, Zohar D teach, but okay. What does the naked snake say? How is the data beautiful if it's not data but an estimation? I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Doesn't seem like there's many estimations going on here. That fine print makes all the difference. Right, okay, I haven't actually read the fine print. Percentage of gun-related homicides in the EU can only be estimated as there's no recording of it. Oh, well, I mean, that completely changes the meaning of the graphic. So they're telling us that this is an estimation. So we're not really comparing like with like here. I mean, that means that all of this is also not comparing like with like. I imagine the data maybe looks quite similar, but yeah, that really needs to be more noticeable here. The title of this chart here should be Homicides in the USA versus Estimated Homicides in the EU. Yeah, that's what you'd have to do. Thank you for watching me critique charts in far too much detail. But if you like that kind of thing, feel free to subscribe or leave a thumbs up and leave a comment to suggest maybe some new charts or new infographics or any other data visualization forms that you'd like me to critique in the future. The whole idea of this channel is that data visualization is an incredibly important way to understand the world, but often there are fairly simple design choices that can be easily corrected to help make charts not only stand out from the crowd more, but also help the audience understand the data more intuitively. And that's really what we're trying to do here. Oh, and of course, I'm planning to release one video per week right now. We're aiming to release on a Monday morning, UK time. So yeah, make sure to subscribe and yeah, you'll receive those notifications when they get released, I think. I think that's how it works. Or maybe you need to click a bell button. I don't know if that bell button still exists or not, But yeah, do something.